Hey, this is Trissa from Sewing and Things, and in this video we're sewing darts and welt pockets for the Grady Sew Along. You are going to need your two back pieces with your dart marked. You are going to need your welt pocket bags, your welt pocket with the interfacing ironed on, your welt pocket facing, and your welt interfacing. So we are going to start off by sewing those darts. So with your dart marked out, with your fabric right sides together, I like to start off by matching up the ends of my dart. And pinch it at the tip. And depending on how long your dart is, I put another few in between. Now, when we sew our dart on, we're going to use a regular straight stitch. You always start at the raw edge and sew down to the edge, and then you'll sew off the edge of your dart. After you sew your dart, we are going to tie it off at the end using a square knot. Here's my completed dart with a long tail at the end that allows us to tie it. And for a square knot, you take your left over the right, and then your right over the left. Open up your pants and go ahead and press that dart in towards the center on both. Go to press them in towards the center. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back. Now we need to mark the welt placement on the wrong side of our pants. We're going to line up the crotch and the sides with the pattern pieces and mark it on. And then we're going to iron on our interfacing on top of that, and then mark those markings again on top of your interfacing. Go ahead and do that with both of your back pieces, and then we'll come back. With your interfacing ironed on and the welt marking traced onto your interfacing, we are now going to take both the welt pocket and welt facing pieces. The welt pocket should have your interfacing ironed on already. We are now going to finish the long edges on all of these pieces with either a serger or a zigzag stitch. So go ahead and finish the top and bottom edges on all of those pieces, and then we'll come back. With the top and bottom edges now finished, we are going to take our welt pocket pieces. We're going to mark the welt placement on the welt pocket. If your fabric is directional, you'll want to make your marking on the bottom of your piece so the print is upside down. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back. With both of those pieces marked, take one of your pocket bags and open it up with wrong sides facing up. You're going to line up your facing with the notches on your pocket. And your facing will be slightly narrower than your pocket lining. You're going to sew along the top and bottoms of the facing close to the edge to secure it to the lining. So go ahead and do that to both of your pocket bags, and then we'll come back. With right sides together, we are going to match up our bottom of our pants with our welt. With right sides together, we're going to match the markings on the welt and the pants and pin those in place. So I like to start off by putting a pin in each of the corners. So I'll put a pin here. I'm going to match it with this pin, this corner. Do that for all of them. Now pin it in place. Now we're going to flip it over, grab your pocket bag, and make sure you have the one where the longer edge is going towards the crotch. So go ahead and line that up at the top edge and make sure the sides are centered over that welt. And then just pin at the top to secure it in place. Your facing piece should be upside down and the facing should be out. So now we're going to flip it back over and you're going to sew along your welt markings. Make sure you stop at each corner and pivot to make nice right angles. Make sure you're sewing through all the layers. So go ahead and do that and then we'll come back. So with your welt sewn on, we're going to press the top down, fold it back up, and then you're going to press the bottom up and then fold it back down. So go ahead and do that and then we'll come back. With that pressed, we are now going to cut through the center of the welt, stopping about a 1/2 inch on either side. And then we're going to turn and create a Y. You're going to want to cut as close as you can to those corners without cutting through your stitches. Now we're going to push our welt to the wrong side. And we're going to want to press your welt nice and flat. If you are getting any weird puckering, it could be because your stitches aren't squared or because you did not cut close enough to the edge. So keep that in mind, but go ahead and give that a nice press and then we'll come back. Now, with your welt pressed nice and flat, you're going to open the bottom. You're going to press the seam allowance open to reduce bulk. Then you're going to fold this down just enough to cover the opening. Give that a nice good press, making sure that you can't see through it when you turn it around. So go ahead and do that and then we will come back. With that fold pressed, you're going to turn over your pants right side up. Now there's 2 ways to secure the bottom of the welt. You can go ahead and just stitch in the ditch. Just make sure your thread is matching. Or a second option is you can open this up and sew as close as you can to this seam line. This creates a bit of a cleaner look since you won't be able to see any of the stitching. So go ahead and do your preferred method. I'm going to go ahead and do it this way, and then we'll come back. Now fold the main and the lining out of the way so you see that triangle that we cut out earlier, and we're going to sew along the base of that triangle. And then after that's sewn, we're going to do that to the other side, moving the main and the lining out of the way, and then again sewing close to that base of that triangle. So go ahead and do that on both sides of your welt, and then we'll come back. We are now going to sew the bottom of the welt to the pocket bag. So go ahead and fold your shorts out of the way. We're going to sew along the edge. Now we are going to sew the pocket bag together using a French seam. However, if your lining fabric is on the thicker side, you can serge or sew your pocket sides together. So go ahead and poke your lining all the way to the right side until everything is nice and flat. Fold your pocket in half so it meets at the top edge. Make sure your pants are out of the way and sew along the edge of the pocket with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And we'll also sew this side pants out of the way with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So go ahead and sew both of those two sides and then we'll come back. With both of those sewn at a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, go ahead and trim your seam allowance in half. Now push your pocket back through. And now, making sure the pants are out of the way, you're going to sew along this edge with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And again, on this side, making sure the pants are moved out of the way and sewing down with a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So go ahead and do that on both of those sides, and then we'll come back. I like to sew with my shorts on top. That way I can make sure I'm not going to accidentally stitch my shorts down. Now we are going to secure the top of the welt by sewing through the lining. So fold the top of your pants down, sewing close, but being careful not to catch the welt. So go ahead and sew that, and then we'll come back. Once that is sewn, you are going to baste the top of your pants to the top of your pocket bag. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back. Once that has been basted, your welt pocket is done. Now go ahead and repeat that for the other side. With both of your welt pockets completed, take your pants right sides together. And we're going to sew along this crotch curve with a 5/8 seam allowance. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back. With that sewn, go ahead and finish your edge with a serger or a zigzag stitch. And if you are sewing a flat felled seam, make sure you are trimming the left seam allowance when looking at the right side of the pants, which would be this one, or the right side when looking at the wrong side of the pants. So go ahead and finish your seam, and then we'll come back. Now you're going to open up your pants and press your seam allowance to the left when looking at the right side, or press it to the right when looking at the wrong side. Now if you want, you can top stitch along this curve. However, for the chino dress pant style, typically those are not top stitched. Once this has been pressed, the back of your shorts are done.
To stay up to date on the latest videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel, or you can check out my blog at sewingandthings.com.